Hi everyone, this is just an update for EdUBudgie 2204. There's been a couple of reviews and a couple of other people have made videos about it, but I had not. So this, what you see here, is the new version of EdUBudgie. You can see it's still based off of the Budgie desktop, hence the name, but some things have changed. Firstly, there's a new logo. The toolbar is still at the top, but instead of being sort of scrunched down in the center, like it was in the previous one, this is a little more similar to Chrome OS, or now Windows 11 really, where you've got the favorite icons in the center there, and just a regular menu over to the side. So if you're new to EdUBudgie Linux, it's quite similar to Windows in that it's a full-featured operating system. If you're familiar with Chrome OS, it kind of looks similar, and it still uses Chrome, and so all of those Chrome applications that you could use with Chrome OS, you can still use with this. They're not going to be there by default, but you can go into the Chrome store and still install them because Chrome is still included with this operating system. One thing I'll say is this is running inside of a virtual machine, and so it actually is going a little bit more slowly than it normally would, but as you can see, here it's running Chrome just like normal. You can sign into it just like you can in Chrome OS. And I would suggest that actually, again, this is running slow because it's actually also running off of my phone's internet connection. It's 2 or 3 times faster if it were actually installed on the computer. This is the first video in a short series that I intend to do comparing EdUBudgie Linux with regular Windows, since I know most teachers and students are using Windows or Chrome OS, and I'm sure that you're familiar with the differences between Windows and Chrome OS. My objective here is to show that EdUBudgie Linux is a good sort of middle ground between the two. So it's got the advantages of Chrome OS in that it's Linux-based, in that you'll probably never have an issue with viruses on it. Updating is much more smooth and consistent than with Windows, but you can also install full-figured apps on here, full-fledged apps. So it comes with several full, complete apps. And there's a regular file system here as well. So, for instance, if we open the file browser, this looks somewhat similar to what you would get with Windows. You can see the icons are kind of similar. You've got pictures, you've got music, and so on. That's something that Chrome OS does not have. So you have access to the full operating system here, which you don't have with Chrome OS, but you do have with Windows. But again, the advantages of not having to worry so much about updates. There are still plenty of updates. There are daily updates. Your school IT administrator can do those, or you can do those yourself. You may need to have administrator access to do the updates, depending on which updates they are. So your school IT person might need to do them. But the updates go much more smoothly with Linux, similar to how they are with Chrome OS as compared to Windows. One thing you'll notice, again, the toolbar is up at the top, which is a little bit different, and the controls for the Windows are over on the left-hand side, kind of similar to how Mac is, rather than on the right-hand side with Windows. I know that frustrates some people, but for me it feels like the place that it ought to be, because it's not Windows, and the idea is not to be a copy of Windows, but to be something that's similar to it, something that's comfortable to use. So hopefully that's the case. But you can see the Explorer is quite similar. I don't really have anything in here, by the way. When you open up the menu, that's where you'll see all of the pre-included, pre-installed software. And that's one of the big advantages with this is it's got a full software suite made for schools, made specifically for education. There are things in here like Break Timer, which is exactly what it says. Safe Eyes is as well. Safe Eyes is to protect your eyes from eye strain, and it gives some other tips about safe computing. Break Timer is simply a timer to take breaks. There's another one. Let me find it here. I'm not sure if it's in System Tools or... I'll have to find it. There's another one. Yes, Blanket. This is made so that you can add ambient sound. So if you like to study while having nature sounds or travel sounds or whatever, or even if you like to go to sleep to them, that is included. Kind of the idea there is to sort of support the health and well-being of our students and teachers. I know during COVID, as a teacher myself, there were a lot of difficult aspects to COVID, and having something like this that can hopefully sort of calm a person down, relax them, I thought was important. So that's why that's included in EdUBudgie. But apart from those, there are a ton of education apps. I know the math teachers in my previous school had used GeoGebra a lot, but there are some other similar tools. I think Kicad is similar to GeoGebra in that you can do graphing of mathematical formulas. Scratch is a programming tool which is used for students. OpenBoard is a whiteboard application. Inside of graphics, we've got several things for artists and for publishing and that sort of thing. So if you wanted to manipulate a photo, there's the GNU image manipulation program. You can do other manipulations with some of these other programs, like Krita is used in particular for some certain file types. Inkscape is another one. Specifically, they're used for vector graphics. LibreCAD is a free AutoCAD alternative. So since EdUBudgie is made for really 10th, 11th, and 12th grade students, I know at least when I was in school, we used to do drafting by hand. This is a free alternative to AutoCAD where students and teachers don't need to buy anything. It comes with EdUBudgie. You don't need to worry about the AutoCAD licenses. You don't need to worry about the Windows licenses, the Office licenses, anything like that. Everything you see here is included and is free. It's right there ready to go. And then there are some basic things like Shotwell Photo Manager is just like the Photos app in Windows, or similar to it. For internet, again, you've got Google Chrome as the main browser. You can still install Firefox. I think there's an Edge version for Linux as well, a Microsoft Edge version that runs on Linux. But since so many schools use Chrome OS and therefore Chrome, Google Chrome was the obvious choice for EdUBudgie. Geary is an email client. You've got a feed reader. Dialect is for translations. And it includes Teams, Skype, and Zoom for doing video messaging. Obviously because of COVID, because that became such an important aspect of life during the COVID-19 struggle that we had there. Rambox is another messaging app, more or less, that has multiple protocols. So you can connect to Skype and Zoom and Teams on Rambox, but you can also connect to your Gmail accounts. Think of WhatsApp is included in Rambox. So that might seem counterintuitive. I know during classes we don't want students to be, messaging with one another, chatting with one another. But if they're working on a laptop at home doing homework, they might need to message a group partner or something like that. And so in that case, you would simply say to students, hey, don't use Rambox in the class during school hours, but if you want to connect your online accounts to it, your messaging accounts to it to use after school, there you go, it's there. For Office, and I'll open this one up here, we've got WPS is the main Office suite here, which is really equivalent to Microsoft Office. There are some others. KWord is one, which is the ebook editor, ebook viewer, and you can see KWord here. That's for ebook manipulation into creating an ebook library. There's a basic calendar in here as well, a PDF viewer. eDrawMind is for drawing mind maps. There's another one in here called Dia that's for drawing mind maps. eDrawMind is a you get some of the templates for free, and you can do quite a bit with those, but there's a premium version that you can also pay for. I don't recommend doing that, but it's there if you need it. There's also Dia, which is included, I think, in the graphics section. Let me see. Yeah, Dia Diagram Editor, which can also do mind maps. So if you'd rather have the totally free version, that's available. If you'd rather have the version that sort of guides you a little bit, we've also got eDrawMind. Focuswriter is specifically for writing and enabling you to focus. So once you set up Focuswriter, I'll show you that one quickly, there's nothing else there. It's just a blank page. Now, the menu and such is still there, but you have to go up and open it. The idea here, and you can change the background, by the way, but the idea here is to be able to simply focus only on your writing and not to have distractions. Something that I'll do on occasion if I'm writing articles for a magazine is open up Focuswriter while I have blanket on in the background. So there's still some ambient noise, but it's comfortable, it's relaxing, and then I can focus right on my writing. And that's something the students could do as well. And of course, if your students have headphones, each student can listen to their own thing while they're writing. Really, hopefully, sort of get their creative juices flowing, if you will. But To jump to WPS, I'd like to show you that because it's such an integral aspect of teaching. You may get this, in which case I would just do not report again. It's about fonts, but that shouldn't be an issue for you. But you can click on New Document. And when you do, what you see here is this is very similar to Microsoft Word. Functionally, it's more or less equivalent, and it should be 98-99% compatible. This is the Word component, so the doc component. There's also a spreadsheet. There's also a presentation software, so like PowerPoint and like Excel. With the presentation software, that's where you sometimes get funkiness happening. But again, it's only like 2% of the time. It doesn't happen often. And normally, if you open up a regular PPT or PPTX in WPS, it will work fine. It should work fine for documents because, again, this is really very similar to Word. And you don't get those file compatibility errors nearly as often with documents and with Excel spreadsheets. But this is here if you are not using Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace. If you're using one of those two, great. You can just go through Chrome, open up your Google document just like you normally would. It's a regular browser, it's a regular computer, and it just works. But if you need to have the offline version, you've got that here as well. One place where this comes in handy for me personally is with spreadsheets, specifically because at my last school we used Microsoft 365 and it worked really well, but the one thing that I could never that I wasn't able to do, that wasn't included in 365, was to import data. So if I had my students' grades in like a text document, I couldn't import them into a new spreadsheet in 365. You can do that with WPS and save it, and then you can take that same WPS XLSX file and you can put it into Office 365. You can put it into Microsoft OneDrive, and then you can open it up and manipulate it through Chrome like you would with regular Office 365. So having a spreadsheet capability on here was an important one. I mean, for me personally as a teacher, and I think it probably will be for many of you. But as you can see, these are very similar to Word and hopefully will be comfortable. You've got the ribbon format up here, home, insert, page layout. Some of the things are going to be in slightly different places. It is a different company. It is a different brand of software, a different version of software, but it should be comfortable for you. You shouldn't be afraid of using this. What you're using now is functionally equivalent to this, or I should say this is functionally equivalent to that, unless you're using Chrome OS, in which case this has way more opportunities. At any rate, let's continue on. There are a few programming things. Visual Studio Code is what's called an IDE. It's a code editor, and that's one of the well-known, often used ones. And so for 11th and definitely 12th graders going through computer science, that one will come in handy. We've also got another Squeak programming system. Scratch. Scratch is kind of lower level, maybe for more like 9th and 10th grade students or students who aren't very familiar with programming. And the idea behind Scratch is to get them the underlying foundation of how to program. Get students thinking about the logic of the programming that they're doing. Geany is another IDE, is another code editor, which is simply one that I like. I believe it's free and open source. It is free. I believe it's fully open source as well. But this gives an alternative to Visual Studio Code simply because some people don't like to use Microsoft products, and that's understandable. And so in this case, you've got Geany and Visual Studio Code. Science, this one's interesting in my mind. Basic 256 is for coding in BASIC. It really should probably be in programming, but it kind of fits in both. You've got GeoGebra again, but one of the programs I love here is Calcium. So for chemistry students, you can open up Calcium. Sorry about that. And you can click on any of these, and it will open up all of the key characteristics of whatever the element is. You can look at the atomic model, isotopes of it, some other information. Honestly, I'm not a chemist. I'm a mechanical engineer, so this goes above and beyond what I know. But you can do molecular editor here. There are lots of different tools within this. This is a fantastic little program. So, for instance, you can go to Perform Calculations, open up, is this the one? Equation Balancer. So if you've got, X number of moles of one element and Y number of moles of another, and you do a chemical equation, how many moles end up on the other side of the two components that end up coming out of that equation. That was something I always struggled with in chemistry, and it would have been lovely to have this back then. But now students have this today. titration calculator, gas calculator. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that in a typical 10th or 11th grade chemistry class all of these things will be needed, but they're all there. And the idea is if your student's using this in, say, 10th or 11th grade, one or two of the calculators, or even if they're just using it to memorize the periodic table or something like that, they can come back to it later. And students who go into university can continue to use this so long as it's suitable for them. I mean, there's no limitation on what age range this software is for. You can use it in 5th grade if it's appropriate for your son or daughter, for your student. I think generally probably 10, 11, 12, and maybe the first year or two of university, only because I think especially by the 2nd or 3rd year of university, you may start to get into some specific, bespoke software that might be based on Windows or might be based on Mac. And so at that point, you may need to change platforms. But really, for those 4 or 5 years between 10th grade and sophomore year of university, there's not much that this operating system can't do. And that was something that I tried to keep in mind when choosing the programs for this. There's a geography application. Kicad is for circuit board design and layout, more so than anything else, but is great for like robotics teams who need to lay out, maybe there are stepper motors that control, I don't know, a robotic hydroplane or something like that. Kicad can help to make PCBs for that you can then send off to like PCBWay and have it made. So for STEM students, I really think this is a good suite of applications. And you can see there are several things here that go along with Kicad. KIG is another, this is Explore Geometric Constructions. I can show you this one. And a lot of these you'll find will give you tips here. This is kind of like a 2D CAD suite, sort of, where you can construct different things. I fully don't know how to use this entirely, to be honest with you, but KIG is sort of like 2D AutoCAD. And you can see it'll prompt you to save just like it would in Windows. KWord Quiz is a simple flashcard game. So if you wanted to do flashcards with your students, or if your students wanted to test themselves, you can put questions in column 1, answers in column 2, and then have flashcards pop up here, or make it into a multiple choice or Q&A. You start out with the editor. So maybe you put your students into 4 teams, and they're creating questions about 4 different aspects of a story that you read in English class. They can put the questions and answers in there and then quiz the other teams and have the teacher keep score on the board. And every student has access to this. All the teachers have access to this. Everyone does. So getting to used to the software shouldn't be prohibitive. And that was a main consideration with EdUBudgie. It should be fairly simple to use. You're not going to use every one of these tools in every class, for sure. You might not even use all of these tools in one specific school. But it gives a good suite that fits within a 32 gigabyte hard drive, solid state drive. And so it fits onto most Chromebooks, most of the x86 based Chromebooks, and can be used in basically any high school to get an awful lot done. Again, OpenBoard is an interactive whiteboard application. You can see it here. I believe you can actually, I'm not sure the setting or where it is, but I believe you can actually move this away so that you can write directly on the screen as well. But you can see it's just like Jamboard with more functionality, something like that. And of course you can save these things as well. Excuse me. Calculate is an awesome little calculator that's got a ton of functions for math classes. So you can see it's kind of like a regular calculator, which does exist on here as well. I mean, we do have a basic calculator here. It's set up for advanced, but it's, you know, like you would have in Windows. But Calculate is that, like, to the 10th degree. When you look at the number of functions, you'll understand what I mean. So if your students are learning algebra, here's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. Calculus, combinatorics, I don't know what that is. But you can see factorials and so on. It's got an awful lot of things in here. I think there are even financial somewhere in here. Yeah, economics, where you can even do simple conversions, where, if I'm not mistaken, it will even download current exchange rates from different countries. This does a ton for math students, statistics students, geometry students, and so on. And it's really almost like having a TI-89. Between this and GeoGebra or KIG or one of the other graphing programs, it's really like having a TI-89 in here between the two, but I think it's even easier to use. With the TIs, at least from what I recall. I haven't used it in a while, but from what I recall as an engineering student, you really had to be worried about the format that things were going into and that everything was perfect. And this, I think, is a bit more intuitive, a little bit easier for students to use, I believe. But speaking of TI-89s, if we come down to System Tools, sorry, I'll have to find it. We can search. Yes, here we are, TILP. We'll let this open up. TILP is a linking program. This right here, if you have TI-89s, 92s, this is the Linux version of the program that allows you to plug a TI-XX into your computer and copy files back and forth. So you still, if you have students who are using those devices still, you can also use Linux for that. You can use EdUBudgie for that specifically. Again, not being a math teacher, being an English teacher, I haven't used it in a while, but it's got similar functionality anyways to the Windows equivalent versions. And you see it'll show up with the RAM and flash memory that's free and so on, and then you can explore through a file explorer, which I do think is similar to the Windows version, but again, I haven't used it in a while. Specifically for TI calculators. Let's see what else we got in here. We got a couple other things that are interesting. So we were on science. You will see some of these are duplicated because some of these fit into more than one category. So Scratch is in science and in programming. May even be in accessories. Where is it? Sorry, in education. Sometimes that's the case. KWord Quiz is in education, but is also in science as well. But this should be a full suite of applications. You may just find the same thing in more than one place, and you can always search, if you didn't catch that before, start to type in the name of it, and it will come up as well. Sound and video, we've got VLC media player, so it will play basically any file format that you've got, MP3, MP4, but also some of the weird ones like OGG-Vorbis or FLAC, or really VLC is awesome, whether it's for Windows, Mac, or Linux, for playing a whole host of different media files. So if you've got a video, or you just finished reading, Great Expectations or something, or Oliver Twist, and you want to show students the video, you can do it. It's right here. You shouldn't have any issue with whatever format it is. VLC has some other advantages too, where you can do things like you can encode subtitles onto the videos and things like that. More advanced stuff. VLC is wonderful. Rhythmbox is just a basic music player. So if you're a student and you've got a whole bunch of MP3s that you've downloaded from somewhere legally and paid for, obviously, you can have it in here in your music folder. You can open it up with Rhythmbox. It's kind of like iTunes without all the junk. There's a software store in here, which when you load it up, you'll see this. And then there's all sorts of things in here that you can download and install and use. For some of these things, again, it's going to go slow because of my internet here. For some of these things, you may need the administrator password for it to work, but for a lot of these things, they'll just work. And of course, you can see what is already installed. So if there's something that you don't want, like say you don't want Darktable in here, you can just click on install and get rid of it. So the software store is really nice to have. There is a task manager, which is different from the normal Linux task manager, basically because it's made to look just like Windows, essentially. It shows 0 gigahertz here and 2.7 here. Again, that's a matter of it being in a virtual machine rather than running natively on this, simply because that's just the way I've got it set up at the moment. But you can change some different things around, and you can look at your Ethernet usage, disk usage, memory, CPU, and so on. You can see right now this is on a 3-core, 2.7 gigahertz with 4 gigs of memory, which might be a little bit more powerful than what a typical Chromebook would be, but it depends on how old the Chromebook is. There are lots of Chromebooks with dual-core, 4-thread processors. This is actually 3 threads, not 3 physical cores. So it's not really getting full fat cores being used, but you can see on 4 gigabytes it runs fairly well. And there are some others. There's a terminal and so on. There's help and things like that. as for universal access, this is really for onboard is an on-screen keyboard. So if you have this on a touch device or a Chromebook that flips over, you can open up the on-screen keyboard. And then Magnus, I think, is a magnifying app. Yeah, screen magnifier for people who have trouble seeing the screens. Apart from that, there are some other niceties here. This is the settings. So like when you first install EdUBudgie, what I'd recommend is going into online accounts and adding your accounts here. You can choose from these different types. But there's lots of other settings. You can change things like the background. These are the defaults. There's a Bluetooth section if you got Bluetooth enabled on your device. You can get into file sharing and print sharing and so on. There's a couple of other things here like to do, which this is just a list of things to do. So you can add tasks to it. You can uncheck tasks. I thought I had some on here. Yeah, there are some right here. You can put a due date and so on. It works well along with the regular calendar that you might use. This calendar has holidays in it and one or two other things. But if you use Google Calendar regularly and you connect to your Google account, all of those things in your Google account will show up right here. So that's about it as for an introduction. Again, I'll do some more videos on comparing Microsoft Word to WPS and Microsoft Excel to WPS spreadsheet, and looking at the differences between like the File Explorer here in EdUBudgie versus the File Explorer that you have in Windows. You can see they're similar though. In the meantime, if you want to give it a shot, you can go to edubudgie.com and then come down here to download, and you can choose a download link and download it. Again, you want the 2204 version. There is a 2004 version, but that's the older one. You wouldn't want that. You'd want the 2204 version. And you can check out news and things like that. This video will be on here along with the other videos. So, bookmark this and look at it later. And you can see the other videos as they come out, comparing those things and kind of showing how to use it. That's about all I've got.